All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Playing School. Today we are heading up to Wisconsin to hang out with Jason Berken from ISA, Impact Sports Academy, up there near Green Bay. Jason, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. Go ahead and get the commercial out of the way from Marucci, another Marucci club. I've been following you guys for a long time, and I'm sure you'll go into this in a minute, but the facility is absolutely beautiful. You can talk about that in a little bit. I just wanted to tell people, head over, if you want to get to know Jason and ISA, over on Twitter, at Impact Sports GB, as in Impact Sports Green Bay. And the website's the same, impactsportsgb.com. Go check out the facility they just had built. It's beautiful. We'll talk about that in a second. But before we do, Jason, tell us a little bit about the journey that you've been on to get to where you are today. Take us back to you don't have to go back to kindergarten or t-ball, but take us back,
right.
Hometown and the stops along the way.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in Green Bay, Depeer, right outside of Green Bay. I went to West Depeer High School. Was able to get a scholarship to play at Clemson. Was there from 03 to 06. In 2002 was when I started getting recruited by them, a little bit later in the process than some of the 14 and 15-year-olds that are committing now. But that was the year they had Khalil Green and Jeff Baker, and we're at the World Series. And that was kind of where I first got familiar with Clemson. And Coach Corbin at the time was the recruiting coordinator. He flew up to Green Bay to watch us, watch me pitch. It was I want to say at the end of May, into almost June. Had a really good game, pitched well, flew on to Clemson the next weekend. I went down to a weekend series, and they were playing Florida State, and it was a packed house, number one team in the country, and the rest is kind of history from there. I came home wearing a Clemson hat. My parents kind of knew right away that was going to be the deal. So I was lucky to go there, spend 4 years there. Had Tommy John while I was there. Was able to redshirt and get a year, so I graduated in 4 years, which was a huge thing for me and my family to be able to say I was a graduate. Was drafted in the 6th round by the Orioles. Had a good career and professionally. I played 11 years, spent 4 years in the big leagues with the Orioles and the Cubs. Throughout that process, I was always trying to find ways to kind of keep my ties back to Depeer, and every year in the off season we'd come back. I'd fly in a bunch of teammates, college teammates, college coaches, and we do what we call the Berken baseball camp. We did it at West Depeer High School. First year we had 30 kids, and by year 4 or 5 we're rolling 300 kids over a weekend that came through, and that kind of gave us the platform to kind of start ISA at some level. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do when I was done retiring. I had some thoughts and hopes to potentially coach at the college level or some level, but ultimately was able to convince my wife, who's not from here, to move back to Green Bay, which was probably the biggest hurdle we had in the whole process. But she somehow gave in, and we opened up Impact Sports Academy. And that was we're in our 5th year right now. We opened it up in our first year. We're just kind of had some ideas and put it on paper, put it together, and we're hoping to get a handful of teams the first year, and I think we had 15 or 16 teams in our first season. Had some ups and downs and some learning curve, but next year I think we're up to 30 teams, and the next year we're at 38 teams, 40 teams. This year we're pushing 50 teams. So it grew fast, and that gave us the opportunity to expand into the facility that we're at now, and just lucky that we're able to have the support and the teams and the families that really bought into what we're doing. And as we outgrew our previous facility that we were just renting, we were able to work with the town of Lawrence and get some land right on the highway and built the facility last summer. We've been in it now for 7, 8 months now, and it's lucky what we have, and we're able to do so much more. And a lot of what we did before is what we're doing here. We're just doing it at a higher level because we have more space. So in our 5th year, and it's been great. I think the area was looking for something like this, and luckily we did the Berken baseball camps and kind of gave the kids a taste of what this would look like, and I think that really gave us a good platform and starting point to get to where we're at today.
Again, I can't reiterate enough. And I've been in hundreds of facilities. I haven't been in yours, but I'm looking at the pictures of it. It is pretty impressive. Can you just describe for those folks before they go to the Twitter to check it out? Describe sort of the layout of it.
Sure. Yeah, it's just under 45,000 square feet. When you walk in, kind of the centerpiece is we have a full major league size infield. We do 50-foot high ceilings in that area. I think that's one thing that's been a little bit different than what we've seen in some other facilities is the higher ceilings. Wanted to have the ability to kind of see ball flights, have a chance, long toss and work on some outfield stuff. Sure, as you can imagine, we spend a lot of time indoors up here. So for us to be able to simulate any sort of live game activity, outfield work, get the long toss in, all that kind of stuff, we wanted to push those ceilings up a little bit. And I think that's been a really huge thing for us. We have 8 70-foot batting cages. We have a 5,000 square foot weight room, performance center. We got a 8-person office. We have a mezzanine that overlooks the field. So yeah, it has everything we need. And everything's versatile, opens up to be able to run 60s, to be able to host showcases, be able to play games. We got a dugout area. We got classroom. We have an 80-person classroom, which we do a lot of work on there. We got a projector and whiteboards and all that good stuff for be able to kind of break down things or hold meetings. So it's got everything we need. And the cool thing is one thing I kind of wanted to create in my mind as I was kind of drawing this out on paper was when you walk in the main entrance, you kind of walk in right behind home plate. And we have a scoreboard up on the wall. We have some awesome marketing partners that are on the wall. So it kind of feels like you're walking into a stadium. And one thing I wanted to make sure we did was allow there to be like a family feel where you're not, pressed behind a net or there's nowhere to sit for parents. So we built the mezzanine. We have a huge walking area around the whole field with seats, dugouts. So the goal was kind of to create that feel of walking into a ballpark. And I think that's kind of the goal was accomplished. And you walk in, you kind of have that, wow, this is the high ceilings, the advertising, the field. It's cool. And everybody asks me all the time, like, would you change anything? I'm like, well, I'd make it bigger. I could, but obviously there's constraints and budgets and all that kind of stuff. But I think ultimately it's exactly what I wanted. It turned out exactly how I envisioned it. I think people walk in, are still super excited. I come into work every day feeling lucky we have this place, and I wouldn't change a thing. It's exactly what I wanted.
The field is a really neat look. There's from the photos I've seen, when you're looking towards the outfield of the field, it's black walls, black fencing. It's very cool, contrasted with white. And so there, when you see the other pictures, there's a lot of white in the facility. And so the white and black just makes a really cool look for me. Last question about the facility. And first of all, it's not the last question because I'm going to talk about it for another minute. The idea of creating space for the families and parents is really cool. I've been in zillions of these places, and you really feel like that is often an afterthought. And it's, obviously listen, people, you get a building, you only have so much square footage. You want to commit as much square footage to the plane, to the ball, to the baseball, right? So you press the limits, and what happens is those parents and the spectators get almost like pushed aside. And so having extra space for them to be able to hang out, watch, relax a little bit is pretty good. And having that mezzanine level is really smart because it gets them off of the main level. It gets them kind of out of the way a little bit.
The biggest thing in our whole deal was we train at a high level. And we'll get into that later, I'm sure, kind of what our backbone, our philosophies are. But we train, our families are here twice a week for 8 months, 9 months of the year. So, we encourage our families, our parents to stay, watch practice, see what your kid's doing. If you're investing this kind of time, money, energy, I want you to see what's happening in this place. So we have a team store, we have it's like you're coming to a ballpark and you want to watch a game. So when these families drop their kids off, we have a lot of families that stay and watch because, look, if I'm investing that kind of energy and time, money into it, I want to see the product. And I think for us, we encourage it because we want them to see the work that's getting put in with the athletes, with our instructors. Because to me, that's what our philosophy has always been is development. We develop, we train, we get kids better. That's our goal. And I want that to be at the forefront of everything. So when a parent comes in, they have a comfortable space to stay and watch. I think it just adds to the excitement and the allure of playing for ISAs. You got a chance to be a part of it as a parent too.
All right. Final question for now on the facility, and it's tough to tell. And that's why I'm asking. The surface on the field, is that turf or is it a sport court? Because on this photo I'm looking at, it really looks like sport court.
No, it's turf.
It is turf. Okay.
Yeah, it's a turf. It's a I forget what they exactly call it, but it plays real. The one thing that I was trying to avoid was the infill, the black pellets. I'm really OCD when it comes to the facility, and the black pellets everywhere would have probably drove me crazy. So we went with it's a thicker, heavier turf. It has a very thick padding, so it allows the ball to play naturally and play like a real turf field. So it turned out great.
So it doesn't have the black pellets?
No, and there's no black pellets.
See,
no.
I could tell it looked different, and that's why I was wondering if it was a sport court. So that's pretty cool, because those I agree. When I'm in those facilities with the black pellets, they go everywhere.
They're in your hair, it's in your shoes. I mean, you're finding it everywhere. And I just this was when we tested it out. We were sent samples at a bigger sample. We were able to kind of see, and we do 1 million ground balls in here a week, and it plays real, it plays true, and so it was probably best case scenario for us to have that, just because I've been to other places. Again, the pellets are great if you're outside and you're playing, in terms of again, I don't know what the difference is going to be in the long run, but from my standpoint, cosmetically, I think it looks great. It plays real. It's going to lasted great so far. So yeah, it's a synthetic turf. Yep.
Cool. All right. Let's go backwards a little bit. We don't need to talk about, your day-to-day on field at Clemson, but I want to hear about just the experience of being around legends of coaching. I mean, it sounds like, so you had a relationship from high school with Coach Corbin. I'm assuming it sounded like, was that during the transition? Was that when he left for Vanderbilt right after? So
he left that summer. He left to Vanderbilt,
okay.
And I give him a ton of credit, because still to this day, if I text Coach Corbin, again, we both have a really good rapport, and he recruited me to go to Clemson. I actually, when he left, I called him and said, look, I want to go to Vandy with you. He's like, no, you don't. You want to be a Clemson Tiger. You didn't commit to Tim Corbin. You committed to Clemson University. And so he was very adamant, you're committed to this program. You need to go to school here. And obviously it worked out great. It was the best experience of my life in baseball, being at Clemson. But still to this day, if I text him, you get a text back. It's like he's been phenomenal. And I give him a ton of credit, because, Coach Leggett, who I played for at Clemson, who's obviously a legend, he tells a story all the time with when Coach Corbin called him from my outing, and he's asking, what was the deal? What was this? What was that? And Coach Corbin just we got to get this guy. And he just kept saying, I don't know what it is. We just have to get him. So he saw something, and thank God he did, because, those 4 years I spent at Clemson were the best 4 years of my life in sports. And it was a perfect fit for me. I couldn't even imagine having it any other way, to be honest.
So Leggett is obviously a Hall of Famer. What was that like, just being in his presence for 4 years?
I mean, he has taught me so much about just attention to detail, discipline, working hard. He was a guy, blue collar, was always just saying, we're going to be a blue collar team. We're going to play the game the right way. We're going to compete in everything we do, whether it be the Omaha Challenge or in the weight room or on the field. It was always about competing at a high level. And, our relationship still this day, I still talk to him, quite a bit. He's actually having we call him Seven as his number. So
yep.
Seven's coaching tree. And player trees, having a gathering in South Carolina next January, I believe, where he wants all of his coaches and players to kind of come back in and see each other again. So just the history of that program, between Bill Wilhelm to Coach Leggett, you had a really long span of super high level baseball at Clemson, one of the top programs in the country. But Coach Leggett was just one of those guys who demanded and expected a lot. And when I look back at those years, like, it really molded me and created what I was able to do at the next level. And even to this day now, I mean, we have a lot of stuff that we instill in our athletes here at ISA when it comes to, the discipline of workout, working hard with teammates, being a great teammate, playing for each other. Like, those are all things that I learned at college. And I'm glad I did, because, as you get to professional baseball, the message does change a little bit, and it becomes a little bit more of a selfish game, I think you could say, because you're trying to, get yourself to the next level more than anything. But in college, it's like you live and die by every game. And I miss those days a ton, because, the purity of college baseball, the togetherness, the team aspect of it is something that you just have a hard time finding at the pro level until you get to the big leagues. At some level, it's a little bit different. But Coach Leggett was great. And again, I had Sully too, who's at Florida now, national championship coach. I mean, his track record of developing players, guys in the big leagues, is incredible too. So he molded me in terms of on the mound, and Coach Leggett a lot of it was, personally. So to have those three guys, I mean, Leggett, Corbin, and Sully, it's pretty incredible if you really think about what they've done for college baseball. To have all three of those guys, the part of my journey is pretty awesome.
Correct. And I'll tell you one thing I didn't realize until just a second, and it's mostly because I'm sitting here looking at the Florida Gators website while you're talking about Jack Leggett, and he, like you said, he goes by 7. That's sort of like his nickname, right? And as you're saying that, I'm sitting here looking at at O'Sullivan's, the page on the roster page, right? And pictures are floating by. Shocking. Guess what number he wears now at Florida?
Number 7, yeah. He actually
number
changed
7.
it. I don't think he was number 7 originally at Florida. I think he changed that. I'm guessing a player initially probably had it when he got there. But, yeah, he made that switch, and I know that Coach Leggett's been down in Florida. He's obviously still heavily involved in the game with Team USA stuff, and I think he actually spent some good time down there with Sully. And Sully will tell you the same thing, that he's obviously made a huge impact on his life and coaching career. So, I mean, if you really, I don't have all the people in front of me, but when you really sit down and look at Coach Leggett from when he coached at Maine to Clemson to, his coaching tree for people is incredible. I mean, Eric Bakich was on his staff at Michigan. You have Tom Reginos at Winthrop, Sully. I mean, it's just the tree of coaches that came through Coach Leggett in college baseball is incredible. For
sure. Very cool, man. That's a good experience. Let me ask you, paycheck aside, gun to head, you go back to Clemson for a year of baseball, or back to the big leagues for a year of baseball?
Clemson, not even close. Clemson. But granted, I met my wife there, got my degree. Went to the College World Series. My best friends in the world are from college. Like, for me, my experience at Clemson was so good that I have a hard time. Like, it is kind of skewed. We do have guys on our staff like Eric Cordier, who was drafted out of high school and straight professional, but he was a second-round pick out of high school, so he didn't have the college experience. So he's more on the pro side, believes in pro. I'm more the college guy, but I think obviously at some level it's somewhat determined determined by your experience. And mine was so good that I would go back. Now, granted, Eric was on a World Series team with the Giants, won a World Series, so I'm guessing he'd probably go back to that year. When I was in the big leagues with the Orioles and the Cubs, our goal is not to lose 100 games. So it's a little bit different for me than it was for him. So, maybe that's part of it too. But granted, the big leagues was incredible, and my experiences there were just amazing. But if I had to pick a season and go back, I'm going to Clemson all day.
All right, I can dig it. Probably, I'd probably make that same decision.
Yeah.
All right. One question about pro ball. Did you love all the Old Bay crabs when you were in Baltimore?
Yeah, everything has Old Bay on it. So eventually, your taste buds, I think, get ruined a little bit, because it's chips, it's fries, it's food. Everything's on there. But when I was playing there, my wife worked downtown, and we stayed downtown in the Inner Harbor in Camden Yards with the brick. Fun fact: the guy who designed Camden Yards also designed the rebuild of Lambeau Field. So if you see it, that red brick color you see at Camden Yards, you see the same color at Lambeau. So fun fact of the day, it was the same architect, I believe, that did both. But Camden Yards, the scenery there at the warehouse, downtown Inner Harbor is amazing. So my experience with Baltimore was great. I was Drafted in '06. I spent 2 full seasons in the minor leagues and was called up. So I was called up quick. I spent the next 3.5 years pretty much in the big leagues, and was super lucky there. I mean, playing in the AL East, spent a ton of time in Yankee Stadium. I spent a ton of time at Fenway Park. Played in every stadium pretty much except a couple. Then, was traded to the Cubs in 2012. So I spent like 6 weeks with the Cubs, made a handful of starts there, pitched pretty well. Majority of my family are Cubs fans. So like my dad, my uncles, like they were all big Ernie Banks, Let's Play 2 Cub guys. And so if I think from like a family standpoint, that was a really cool kind of way to, that was the last part of my big league career. But to have my family be able to come down to Chicago and see my debut down there with the Cubs, like that was something that was pretty special. It's because of all the tradition there. I mean, I think of Fenway and Wrigley the same as Lambeau. It's like the mecca of professional sports in certain sports. So to play for them was phenomenal. Then I spent a handful of years in AAA after that, and played for some other organizations. But that 4-year window of being in the big leagues was incredible too. I got a chance to face guys I looked up to. I remember my favorite story from the big leagues. I got a chance to face Griffey. He was with the Mariners. He was my favorite player growing up. And when I was playing, I was collecting autographs and doing jerseys and signatures and that kind of stuff. And the rule kind of was, if you want like a ball signed or something small, like the clubhouse kid would run over there and get it signed for you. But if you want like a jersey or something bigger, like you'd have to ask the guy yourself. So I was standing out watching BP at Safeco Field, like where my wife's from. So it was a pretty cool experience for her as well. And Griffey's hitting BP, and I'll stand next to Rich Hill, and Rich had talked to him before, and he's like, you want to ask him? I'm like, yeah. So he called him over, and I said, hey, Mr. Griffey. I'm like, I didn't know what to call him. I was so nervous. I called him Ken, I called him Junior, so I called him Mr. Griffey, I think is what I called him. And I'm like, hey, I be brutally honest, like, you're my hero growing up, like a backwards hat, try to make your swing like I wore your cleats when I was a kid. And he's like, how old are you, man? You're making me feel really old. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, will you please sign a jersey for me? Like, it means the world to me. And he's like, send it over wherever you need. So I ran up to the team store, bought a jersey. I was way overpriced. Didn't matter. Sent it to him, signed it for me. He was hanging in my locker the next day. And it was like, then that night after I asked him to sign the autograph, I faced him. And I'm like it got no better than that. So, facing Jeter, I remember one time he walked through the batting cages and I'd faced him the night before, and he said, hey, what's up, Berken? Good job last night. And I was like, holy crap. Like,
oh my God, he knows your name.
Right. I mean, he probably hit a bomb off me. He probably was friendly with me at the time. But I just think back to the opportunity I had to face, play with Vlad Guerrero, play with Markakis, Adam Jones, had a chance to be in spring training with Buster Posey and Bumgarner. Like, you just think about those guys because your whole life you're chasing those guys. And being fully honest, I was an average, major league pitcher at best. I was a decent starter. I had some couple good years as a reliever, but I was just an okay player. So to be able to be around those guys and kind of just see how those guys work, and what it really took to be that good. And that's the thing that's, I think a lot of fans don't understand is like, yeah, they're really good and they're really talented, but they're really good because they put the work in at a super high level. Like, it doesn't happen by accident. These guys are obsessed with being great. And, the idea of that has really carried with me in terms of, I want to try to carry that over into business, into life, and instill it in my kids where, like, hard work it's tough, but when you put the work in, typically results come in at a pretty good level. And when you're around these greats, you just see it to the extreme.
For sure. What's amazing is like, there's only a handful of guys who are in the big leagues every year, right? It's a pretty small club. Yep. Even within that club, there is just enormous differences in talent, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of mind-boggling to think that of those couple hundred, few hundred guys in the big leagues on any given year, there's like a dozen of them that are just way better than everybody. And
yeah.
like you rattled off a few of those names. I remember, Griffey was just the gold standard, but you also mentioned Andrew Jones, and just watching him track down balls in the outfield. And then you mentioned Jeter, obviously. There might be some internet geeks who will say he wasn't that great a shortstop, but my eyes told me different.
Yeah, and the thing that you realize with those guys is, like, it's just, you're around them, it just feels different. Like, it's just different. Like, it's just the feeling, the aura, like, it's a real thing. And even the player, again, to your point, you're in the big leagues.
Yeah, you're a peer. You're a peer of theirs at that point.
You're one of 25 guys on a team in the world playing, and you get around a guy like Jeter, and you're like, oh my God, I was like lost. I'm like, holy, or facing Ichiro or Jim Thome. Like, I went through one day thinking of guys that I faced that, like, in the Hall of Fame. Like, those are the guys that are like the millionth percent of the world, and you're on a field with them, facing them. At some level, once the competition starts, you're trying to punch them out. But, like, when you get on the field with them, it just was different. And when you hear guys say, like, well, the numbers aren't this, numbers aren't that, like, you can't quantify the ability to be a winner like Jeter. You can't quantify, just the way they play and those little things. Like, you can look at numbers and they're all great, but I just remember being in a clubhouse with some of these guys, and it just was like, they just were different. And
sure.
I played for Buck Showalter. He kind of the same way. Like, when he stepped into the clubhouse, like, things just got different instantly. So the guys that are great for a reason, and having a chance to be around those guys is great. And I mean, that's the one thing I'll say from the big leagues that's different is, like, talking about this stuff and telling these stories. Like, it's pretty awesome. Like, I'm not gonna lie and say it's not. And that's the best part of it, was remembering those stories. And those are the things that you miss the most. I don't miss playing. I really don't. Like, when I was done, and I had no ambition. The next year came around. I didn't miss spring training. I didn't miss any of it. But I missed, like, just being around guys and talking baseball. But that's the one thing that we've been able to build at ISA, which I think has helped myself and even some of the other guys here. Is like Eric Cordier played in the big leagues, had a 13-year career. Jeremy Horst played in the big leagues, had a 12-year career. Hunter Larson played professionally. We got a bunch of pro guys here. Josh Mazzola played 12 years professionally. We have a lot of pro and college guys here. So, like, when we're in the office area before practice, like, you feel like you're in a locker room, which is cool. And we're on the field together. We're teaching. We're giving each other crap in between sessions. We're hanging out. Tuesday night, we all go out together and get dinner after practice. So, like, those are the things that we've done where it does feel like you're still kind of in the game, and you get that fix of wanting to be around it when you're here. So it's been able to, I think it's been easier for us to kind of make that transformation from playing to this, because, it does feel like we're kind of still involved at that same level.
I'm looking for a tweet of mine from a couple months back, and I can't find. Here we go. June 4th, 2021. I tweeted, "Why doesn't every travel baseball organization also have travel softball?" And I'm looking at your website. Softball is a big deal for you guys. It looks like
it is.
And as you rattled off all a lot of your high level baseball coaches. I'm looking at your staff page. You also have just an unbelievably high level softball staff as well.
Yeah.
And this is travel ball talk. I'm a baseball guy, but I'm curious to get your take on the softball world for a few minutes.
No, we've been the softball and baseball programs mirror each other for us. It's the same amount of training, same access, same everything. It's really no different for us. Jenna Wepsey, who runs our softball division, was a Division I player at UWGB. She played professionally overseas for a handful of years. She's phenomenal. She runs it. She's the head honcho for softball, and she does her thing, and she's been killing. We have 15 softball teams. My daughter is 10U. She plays on the softball team. She's a lefty slapper. She loves it. So the softball part of it to me has been great. I actually personally, when you watch a super high level softball game, like a 16U high level game or a 16U baseball game, like, I'd actually prefer to watch the softball game just from a pure watching, because the pace of play, the pitching, the way the girls, I mean, it's just such a faster game. And we've had some guys step in and face some of these girls, and I've stepped in and, like, you got no chance. I mean, from the rise, the drops, the spins are able to create, the shorter distance. You're at 43 feet. I mean, it's tough.
Gets on you in a hurry, doesn't it?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. And then the rise ball is like, I don't know how anybody even touches it. I mean, it's thigh high, and before you know it, you're swinging it at your chest and it's in the glove. So it's tough. But softball is a huge part of what we do. And again, we have again, for softball and baseball, it's the same thing, it's the same difference. We train the same amount of time. We have other softball staffers like Jean Rivette, who's in the Wisconsin Softball Hall of Fame. She's one of our main pitching girls. We have a bunch of former players that played Division I, Division II. We have some current players at the Division I level that train with us in the off season. So we've invested in our staffing equally. The difference is obviously on the baseball side and stuff versus softball. The career aspect of it as a player is obviously a little bit different for baseball. So I think just naturally we're going to have more former pro players just because that's an avenue for boys more than it's for girls. But for our girls, we've had a bunch of girls commit to play college softball. And the cool thing is we're seeing, now that we're in our 5th year, we have a lot of former players coming back that want to coach in the summer, help with trainings, be a part of it. So for the athletes, I think they actually think it's cooler to see those players than it is to see us old people who used to play, a million years ago. So for them to be able to see these former and current players that came to the program be a part of it is big. But honestly, softball for us, it's not much different. I mean, now that I'm a softball dad, I get to see it firsthand and be a part of it. And the game's great. Our investment in softball is that the same with baseball. So it's phenomenal.
Let me repeat that tweet and specifically to you and ask you this question. You're in it. You have it. It's a big thing for you. So the tweet was, why doesn't every travel baseball organization also have travel softball? Why do you think they don't?
I think a lot have tried and it just hasn't worked out. But I think the big reason why I think it works for us is because, again, if you're a baseball first academy and then you try to add softball, I don't know. Again, I'm just guessing. I don't know if the investment is the same as what you put into baseball. So if it feels like it's a secondary ancillary offering, maybe the investment isn't there from from a time standpoint or willingness to commit to it. Where from day one, it's been apples to apples. So our investment into both has been equal the whole time. Again, we have a dedicated softball person who's a female. I think that helps because I do think the girls naturally are going to relate and connect more with a former softball female player. So we have full-time female staff members that I think makes a big difference. I think that's where people have seen it from us is it doesn't feel like it's an afterthought. It's part of what we do. It is ISA. Baseball and softball are equally the same at ISA. So I think that's a lot of it. I do think there's more. I think there's more parents that are willing to do their own thing for softball and create their own teams. And there's also more, free stuff for up here. I think there's more high school programs that offer teams in the summer, and it's just maybe that's part of it too. But I think the biggest thing is just the investment into the actual softball part of it. If you're a baseball first organization and you add it, if the investment's not equal, families are going to see that right away, especially the kids playing both, which a lot of our families do have kids playing on both ends. And I would say that they feel that it's no different. That's probably why I think it's worked so well for us.
This has been a thing I've been curious about for a long time, and it just seems so logical. I mean, you think about sort of like the back end, sort of the administrative part of it is just repeatable. From registration to scheduling to uniforms to right, like those type of things are just you can replicate that between one sport and the other. To be honest with you, it's not just softball. I'm kind of curious why a lot of these travel baseball teams haven't gone into, maybe flag football or basketball. Right, because there's just a natural extension of the back office piece of it. Like, okay, you've got it pretty dialed in for this amateur sport. So, let's just apply it to a different sport. So, anyway, I digress. But man, you've done a good job. Obviously, you've hooked on with Marucci. Are you guys sending teams down to their big World Series events at the 16 and 17U levels each year?
Yeah, we typically do every year. I think last year was a little bit difficult for us with COVID and travel. That's the one thing. We're probably, aside from like CBA in California and that kind of stuff, we're traveling quite a ways for that. So a lot of it depends on, too, is, what weekend that matches up with for some of our ages. If there's an event that's closer to home, that makes more sense for our older athletes to play in from a recruiting standpoint. Then we have to follow, where that's best for the kids. But the event they put on down there is phenomenal. I mean, you're at Alex Box Stadium and LSU. The pageantry and the stuff that surrounds it is just awesome. And you've done a really good job with. We played at Tulane a couple of years ago. We played at Southeastern a couple of years ago. So you're playing at really nice facilities. You're playing, obviously, some of the best programs in the country. I'll never forget. We went down there the first year. We were part of the Marucci Club, so our first year. We were lucky to get out with them right away. And our first game, this is the team that I coached. It was our best team we've had. We had a bunch of Division I guys, Caden Costabucky, Josh Blount, JP Gauthier, a bunch of D1 guys, and we were good. We got lucky that first year. We had like a really high level 15U team. So we went down there, and the first game we played was against the Dallas Tigers. And Tommy Hernandez is coaching.
Yeah,
he's a legend in the game.
Yes, he is.
Their shortstop, I forget his name. He just was a first round pick this past year. He was a third overall pick. He's playing shortstop, and it was like, okay, this got really, really fast. We're not playing in Green Bay anymore. And I remember I remember telling the guys, like I said, I'll never forget the little rah-rah speech I gave them. I said, look, if there's one thing I can say about my career, I was never scared. Like, I was going to compete. If I got my butt kicked, it is what it is. But like, I was never scared to get after somebody and compete. Like, I'm gonna just go compete. Whatever happens, like, just get after it. And all of a sudden, it's like 7-0 after 3. We're up. I'm like, holy crap! Like, this is happening. And then I was trying to play the long game and the short game. Like, I really want to win this game because it'd be awesome. But I also can't use all my guys. I have 4 or 5 more games to fill.
Yeah.
I think we lost 11-10 in extra innings. But we played unbelievable. And like that night, it was a big talk. Like, who's this ISA team? What are you guys? You guys just almost beat Tigers? I'm like, yeah, it was good. And I think that kind of gave our guys and gave our academy just some recognition. Like, okay, we have good players. And I think at some level, it kind of validated what we're doing, because until you really get out there and play, you don't know. And you're kind of wondering, like, are we that good? And for the kids, for us to be able to go home and say, look, we competed with some of the top programs in the country, and we're able to win. And if you went 3-2 down there and won a couple games, and that was kind of like our real first, like, okay, this is a real thing. We have good players. We can compete. And for the players, I think it set those guys up for the next couple of years to be able to go. And that team ended up taking second place at the ABCs, the national tournament in Grand Park, and kind of gave us our big platform to be able to get high-level players to come play here. But the Marucci guys are phenomenal. Kyle Acor kind of runs that division for them, is great. Trey McClure, who's our personal rep, I would consider him a really good friend now. And their investment into making their products better, pushing the limits. They hired the Glove Cowboy. Check him out on Instagram. He's their glove guy. He's awesome. So glove line.
You can't skip over that. What is the Glove Cowboy? How am I not familiar with this?
On Instagram, I'm telling you, he's the OG. He's awesome.
Oh man,
he designs all their gloves. So go on Instagram, check out the Glove Cowboy.
All right,
he is the man.
Well,
he does a phenomenal job with their gloves. So product wise, they're great. They do our jerseys. They do balls. They do everything you can imagine. They do it, and they do it at a super high level. And obviously, they just acquired Victus recently. They acquired Lizard Skins recently. So they're pushing the envelope on everything. When you think about the bats at the major league level, Marucci Victus are the gold standards, and I think it makes up a pretty large percentage of the bats at the big league level are their bats. So they're a lot of former players. They're a bunch of big leaguers, pro guys, and they do a really good job.
We're obviously a big fan. They're the platinum sponsor for this podcast, so I've always been a big fan. That's why we seem to work these commercials in for them every other episode. So awesome. You guys, yeah, that's a joke, by the way. But if they wanted a sponsor, they could.
I'll make a call for you.
All right, hey, looking at you, Kyle. Hey, let's talk geography a little bit. Because this is something that could pose as a challenge for you guys. You guys are, darn near Canada up there in the Green Bay neighborhood. What's sort of the game plan when you hit the summer circuit? Is it we're sticking close to home with the exception of a certain event, or is it we're going to be on the road all frickin' summer because we need to be? Like, where do you fall on that spectrum?
Yeah, the one thing we tell our families is we have A teams, we have B teams, we have C teams. At the youth level, we have 4 or 5 teams at every level. And the one thing that we express to them is like the training, the uniforms, the coaches, like none of that's any different for any team. You all get the exact same treatment, same access, same everything. So everyone's treated the same. The only difference is we have to customize every team's schedule so that makes sense. And we don't want to chase tournaments for teams if they're not ready for them. We want to make sure they can be competitive. And if that means staying closer to home, then great. But for older teams especially, I mean, there's obviously a handful of tournaments that you just can't miss. We go to Grand Park for a couple of events. We play in the MPL. We play in the ABCs. Creekside out in Missouri has built a new facility. So we go out there for a couple of events. We do stay locally. Prep Baseball Report, PBR, does an amazing job in Wisconsin. The guys that run that are phenomenal. So we do play in a couple of their events, which are in the state of Wisconsin. We host a lot of tournaments that we run. The Green Bay Rockers, who are a Northwoods team, they have a nice turf field here in Green Bay. So we rent out that facility for 3 or 4 weekends a year. We host a 16U, 17U tournament there that kind of starts off our summer. So we have one kind of local tournament that we have a lot of small, Division III schools in the area come in and watch. We get some schools to come in and start there. Then obviously the rest of the summer we're traveling quite a bit. But again, there is some tournaments that are closer to home. There's some that are further away. But it really just comes down to like what is the best fit for that group. And I think early on, especially, we were chasing these big tournaments to say that we were in them. And I think at some level you almost had to prove that, look, we can get into these tournaments, and B, we can compete in these tournaments. But I think now that we're in our 5th year, it just really comes down to like what is going to best suit those athletes on that team. If that means going to the biggest tournament we can because we have to, then we will. If that means staying closer to home and playing in front of schools that are likely going to be recruiting them, then we'll do that. Because our message to our athletes at the older levels has always been like, we need to find the best fit. We don't need to find the highest, flashiest, sexiest name. Let's find a spot that you can go and invest the next 4 or 5 years of your life in, because to me, those 4 years of college are going to set you up for the rest of your life, whether it be playing or just as a person in a career. Like those 4 years, you're going to look back and say 18 to 22, that molded me forever. So I don't want to see kids transfer. I don't want to see kids leave. I don't want kids to go to schools because I want them to go there. It looks better for ISA, whether it's Clemson or whether it's a smaller school. Like it doesn't matter to me as long as it's the right fit for the athlete. Obviously, you want the kids to go to the highest level possible so they compete at a level that they feel is adequate for them. But that's not the message from us. Like, we want you to go to where you can compete, have a great opportunity to play, get your education, be somewhere that you wanted, spend 4 years there. So the chase is more on that than it is like saying we went to a certain tournament. So on the youth side, obviously we want to compete at big tournaments, but I think from the youth side, we do stay closer to home because there are good events here. We host a bunch of youth tournaments as well. So I think that, I think families value staying home too sometimes. So we have a league that kids play in every week. They play in league games for 14U under. So we have grandparents and we have aunts and uncles that come watch them play with hosting the tournaments. The families can stay close to home because, travel's great. That's part of the whole allure of travel baseball, but staying home playing is great too. So the balance for us is that we try to mix for every team to give them an opportunity to do both.
For sure. It is, this is an obvious statement. Many of the teams that head to Georgia for the big events really have no business being there. Like, the team, listen, a regular, solid team from my area with a majority of these kids who are going to go play for really strong D3 programs here in Virginia, which are awesome schools and awesome programs. Those kids don't necessarily need to go to Atlanta to play in front of SEC coaches. And I think the programs know that. But what's happened in my opinion over the last few years is we've had this whole generation of kids who grew up going to Cooperstown, and now it almost feels like the parents think that Atlanta is sort of like the Cooperstown of the older age groups and sort of like this rites of passage. And I swear, like, I know guys who run programs who straight up say, like, if we don't go to Atlanta, like, they're not going to play for us. Like, they'll go play for somebody else. And it's like, it's kind. I mean, like it's kind of silly, yeah. But you know, you don't want to like lose an entire team just because you don't want to, you know, necessarily go there, even though you know it's not the right thing.
Right. Well, there's a business side of it too, obviously, where you want to make sure you're providing opportunities for kids. I think the parents, we're like super transparent now to the parents. If we tell them like this is the goal of what we're trying to do, here's the direction we're trying to go for this team, and you know, what we do also is we sit down with our athletes on the lower levels and try and talk to them about like, okay, where do you want to go to school? You know, what are the goals? So we can have a kind of blueprint as to where these kids are targeting. And honestly, if you're an SEC player or you're an ACC player, with the way things are now, there's so many ways to be seen that if it doesn't have to happen in Atlanta. Again, we've gone to Atlanta. We've been there pretty much every year. And again, for teams that I feel like need to go there, of course, if we have a handful of guys that are that level of player, then if that's the best thing for them, then awesome, we'll go. But to send a team down there that has no players that fit that mold, then I think it's just the investment could be better spent somewhere else to where it's going to actually benefit the kids,
right?
To get them in front of the right schools.
I agree 100%.
You get a lot of games, but again, if we need to go to that tournament and we have players that really can help them, then we'll do it. And we've gone there pretty much every year. That's also where the Baton Rouge and the Marucci Road Series can come into play because now you're playing down there in front of all the schools anyway. So like for us to have that option at some level because we have the relationship there and we know that those schools are going to be there watching, that's where that tournament can make a big difference for us too, because you know the challenge of Atlanta at times is you're spread out, you're playing in a bunch of different fields, and how do you get the people to come see you? There's obviously connections that we have that you really reach out to coaches, hey, we're going to pitch on this day, and that's what we do. But it really just comes down to let's find the best thing for our teams, and I think that we've built up enough trust with our families that they're going to trust us that we're going to go to the right tournaments to get our kids in front of the right coaches, but also knowing that like our bread and butter is going to be Midwest schools. So if our kids, the majority of our kids are going to be going to Division I, Division II, Division III schools in the Midwest, well, it's kind of our responsibility too at some level to get them in front of those schools because
of course
that's going to be their best chance to go to the appropriate school. So we've learned that, look, there's a need for some of these bigger tournaments, but that being said, there's some really, really high-level events in the Midwest. I mean, Grand Park does a phenomenal job. The Midwest Prospect League has some of the top programs in the entire country. The ABCs always do. We go to Creekside, which is a little bit more towards the west. We hit some of those Midwest schools. But, again, our targets for our kids that we feel are best, majority of them are in our Midwest region. So we're going to prioritize that schedule more than anything.
Outstanding. Hey, I'm looking at the clock here, and I want to be respectful of your time. This has been a lot of fun. If you have a minute, I want to ask you two last questions. The first one's probably a quick one, and the second one might be a little longer. The first one's sort of a layup here. Do you have a book or movie website that you think that you recommend to all your coaches or all your friends who are getting into coaching?
Yeah, my agent, who I have when I was playing, his name's Mike Milchin. He's phenomenal. He was a psych major, has a master's in it. He passed on this book called The Secret of the Slight Edge. It's by Bob Milad, and it just talks about just like the disciplines of making small incremental changes, how they can become very big changes. It talks about the importance of visualization and having positive self-talk. And
tell me the name one more time.
Secret of the Slight Edge.
I'm gonna try and pull that up.
And honestly, he gave me that book to me early on in my career, and it made a huge difference on my performance. Just the visualization standpoint, the positive self-talk. I mean, it's so easy in baseball to have the negative thoughts and feelings going through your brain because there's just so much failure in the game. But if you're able to just make small disciplined choices, changes, you know, sooner or later, those small changes are going to turn into some really big changes. And, you know, I find myself in the bullpen doing a ton of visualization, just thinking about how I want my pitches to shape, how I want them to look. But I've passed on a couple of our coaches here. They've really enjoyed it. It's a great read. It's an easy read, but it also just kind of puts things in perspective as to how, you know, you have a decision every day to make on how you want your day to go. So when you get up in the morning, you can decide if you want it to be really good or you can decide if you want it to be crappy. And how you act and your decisions you make in that day are going to determine the outcome. So for me, it's like the decision I get up in the morning is I'm going to get up and it's going to be a great day. I'm going to tell myself that. I'm going to do whatever I can to make that work. And as you build those days together, huge successes that, come about as a result. So.
Very good. I've never heard of this book. It's called The Secret of the Slight Edge by Bob Moawad. That's Moawad. Very cool. I've never heard of that one. I appreciate you recommending that one.
Good read.
All right, last question. This might be a little longer answer, maybe not. We'll see.
Sure.
If I give you the magic wand, what's one change you think could be made to travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact?
I was actually thinking about that. He had passed on that question to me earlier yesterday. And I was talking to my wife about it, and it's like it's such a great question, but there's so many layers to it. It's like, where do you really start? I'm just thinking, like, for us personally, and what I feel like has made the biggest difference for us is like the commitment to development is, I think, what I would like to see happen at a higher level for travel. I think this chase of trying to play on teams or trying to play. I think there's been, at some level, we've lost sight of like developing really good players. And for us, it's always been like, that's the starting block for us. The backbone of ISA is we're going to develop baseball and softball players at a super high level. We're going to teach you how to play the game the right way. We're going to talk about the smaller things that make a difference. For when you get to your high school, you're prepared. Or when you get to college, you're prepared. I feel like we're chasing these tournaments and these games. It's all you want to do is play. But I think we're losing a lot of the smaller things that make a difference at the next levels. I mean, you get to college, if you can't get a bunt down, it's going to be tough. If you're the number 3 hole hitter in your high school or travel team, the chances are you're not going to roll into a high-level program and be hitting third. You're going to probably hitting towards the bottom of the lineup. How do you run bases the right way? How do you understand situational hitting? Like, those are the things that I think initially, even to my fault, like we were really focused on showcasing and highlighting our players. Like, we want them to like always get a chance to get that hit in front of the school. But I think we realized that like we're going to have more opportunities to play if we play good baseball and win, and we're going to have more opportunities to showcase players to a college that he knows how to play the game the right way, which is going to be appealing to the majority of colleges, because I think you hear feedback from schools like, well, we get these players and we got to start over. We got to teach them all these basics, and before you know it, a year or two is gone, and now they're mad they're not playing, or they're wanting to transfer because they're not getting on the field. And I think that if kids can go into these next levels better equipped, just understanding and learning how to play and do those things, I feel like they're going to be better equipped to have success. And that's something we pride ourselves on, like, at an extremely high level, is like understanding how to be a good baseball and softball player. And that's something that we do inside on the field all the time. Even in the summer when we're playing, we're going to play team baseball, and we're going to run the bases hard. We're going to play the game the right way. We're going to respect our teammates. We're going to be great teammates. You'll hear it a million times. You're like, be a great teammate. Like, that's a big part of this. Like, don't be a selfish player. Play for each other. That's the first thing I tell the parents when I have a meeting before the year. Like, we're going to be great teammates. I will not tolerate selfish play. I will not tolerate, people not treating each other right. Like, that's just something that we will have here at every level is that part of it. So it probably goes back to like my college days where at Clemson, like, everything was about the team and everything was about each other. And when you lost, like, it hurt. And when you got beat, it mattered. And when I got to pro ball, I'll never forget my first outing I had in professional baseball. I think I went 7 innings, gave up 2 runs, and we lost 2-1. And I'm in the clubhouse after the game, and I'm like crushed. I'm like, we lost. What could have done differently? And the manager came up to me and goes, "Man, that was awesome. Great game." And I didn't understand. I'm like, "What? Like, we lost?" He's like, "Dude, like, yeah, but you pitched great." I'm like, "I understand, but like, it doesn't matter. We got beat." And he's like, "Well, you're gonna understand here quick." So I'm like, if you take care of what you can do and you perform at a high level, like, your opportunities to advance are gonna be really good. And it took me a little while to kind of figure that out, I guess, because I was so ingrained about the winning and losing, and competing, and that's what we did together, where I think that was hard for me to understand. And it does feel like the travel scene is going a little more towards like that pro feel, where it's like, get your hits, get your own stats, and everything's gonna be fine. But I think for us, that's kind of always been a little bit different, where we're like, this is going to be a team development. You're going to be great teammates. We're going to compete together. And I think that's put our kids in an opportunity to advance to the next level and be prepared for what that's going to be like when they get to college.
Yeah,
that would probably be my biggest change if I had to settle on one. That's probably where I would land.
Got it. Awesome answer. Awesome talking to you today. This has been a ton of fun. Jason Berken, ISA Baseball, Impact Sports GB, over on Twitter and on their website. Man, I really appreciate you coming on today. It was a lot of fun. Do you have any final parting shots, or is that last monologue your parting shot?
No, I mean, you do a great job. We had talked about earlier. I've listened to a handful of your podcasts. I think it's awesome what you're doing. Just trying to connect more people, see what people are doing, see if we can do something different. And I think for us, it's always about how can we adapt and change and make things better for our families. And listening to other people on your podcast has been great. And hearing from some of the other Marucci families that we have out there that are part of it, it's been super helpful, informational. So I'm glad I got a chance to come on, and I'll continue to listen to what you're doing. And again, you've done a great job, so I appreciate the opportunity.
I appreciate Marucci sponsoring these podcasts each and every week.
I'll make that call for you. See what I can do for you.
You got it, man. This has been a lot of fun. Have a good rest of your day, man. I appreciate you coming on.
I will. Absolutely. Thank you. I
See
appreciate it.